My name is Viola Ramirez, and I'm 28. If love had a sound, for me it was the soft clatter of Grandma Oilia's blue porcelain plates on a Sunday afternoon. For as long as I can remember, I drove 40 minutes on a two-lane road that ribboned through fields the color of late honey, just to stand in her warm kitchen and be told gently, "You're cutting the onions too shy, sweetheart. Don't be afraid of the knife." Grandma is 79, sharp as a tack, sharper than I am, some days, and the unofficial historian of our family. Her stories arrived with the steam from her pot roast, the Navy years with my grandfather, the dance hall in 1965 where he wore a suit too big and a grin he never outgrew, the winter the pipes burst and they made soup on a camp stove in the living room. I memorized them the way other children memorize constellations. My younger brother, Charles, 26 and strategically charming, rarely came by except for holidays. He cultivates the kind of casual distance that reads like mystery to strangers and like calculation to anyone who's ever split a dinner bill with him. When he did appear, he leaned in the doorway, phone in hand, pointing at the pot roast like an anthropologist. "Historical specimen," he'd say. "Do we have delivery?" I never judged him, not out loud anyway. 3 weeks ago, no, count right, 21 days ago, he called me. "Grandma says she needs to see you. Urgent." His voice was smooth as ice water. "Be there at 4. "Is she okay?" "Be there." At 4, our grandmother's house looked the same as every Sunday. The geraniums trying bravely in the window box, the little brass bird on the door. But when I stepped into her living room, the temperature dropped. Mr. Peterson, her lawyer, a man whose handshake usually smells faintly of church coffee, sat in the armchair. Charles stood behind Grandma with a hand placed on her shoulder as if he'd always belonged there. And Grandma, my vibrant, irreverent, fussy about salt Grandma, wouldn't look at me. "Sit, Viola," she said. The voice was hers, but the warmth was gone. My phone buzzed. Ethan, my boyfriend, had texted a photo of the stir-fry he'd made for his lunch shift. "Knock 'em dead. Call after." A second later, another bubble popped up from an unsaved number. Sophie, Ethan's ex. "Funny who cooks for you now." I locked my phone and slid it into my bag. Not now, not this room. "Mrs. Ramirez," Mr. Peterson began, folding his hands, "your grandmother asked me to be present to witness a decision." My stomach performed a small, neat somersault. "What's going on?" Grandma looked at the window, the geranium petals trembling in a draft. "I've been told things, Viola," she said. "Things that broke my heart." Charles's hand tightened on her shoulder, and he tilted his head sympathetically at me, the way someone might observe a museum exhibit labeled Unfortunate Choices. "What things?" I whispered. "That your visits are a chore you endure for an inheritance." The word sat in her mouth like something spoiled. "That you laugh about it with your friends. That you call me the old lady and joke about my time running out." I felt the floor tilt. "No. Grandma, no." I stepped forward. The air felt dense, like the thickening part of a storm. "I love being here. You know I do. Who told you that?" Charles's eyebrows crept up. "It isn't about me, Viola." He kept his voice tender, a saint at a bedside. "It's about your choices. I didn't want to be the one to say it, but I overheard you in the driveway on the phone, and I couldn't stand by and watch you use her. My mouth worked around the truth like it was too large to fit past my teeth. "I never said that. I never would." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Your grandmother has decided to remove you as beneficiary and transfer your portion to Charles. She is also requesting you no longer visit the property." He looked at his briefcase as if it might forgive him. "This is her decision, not mine." "Grandma," my voice split, "please, look at me." She did. It felt like facing a locked door that was once, always, a gate held open with a smile. "I thought I knew you," she said, voice steady, eyes cold. "But I have to protect myself. You've broken an old woman's heart." Charles guided me toward the foyer, his breath smelling faintly of peppermint and victory. "You have your Sundays back," he murmured, too soft for Mr. Peterson to hear. "That's what you wanted, right?" I stood on the porch while my heart tried to exit my body via my throat. The air hurt to swallow. The brass bird on the door watched me like it knew what I didn't. I drove home without remembering the turns. In the apartment, I slid to the kitchen floor with my coat still on. Ethan found me that way 10 minutes later. He'd finished early and detoured when I didn't call. He didn't ask for the story right away. He just sat down, back to the cabinet, and took my hand so gently I almost didn't notice when the tears started. When I finally told him, he listened. "Okay," he said. "We'll fix it." "How? She won't answer my calls. She sent my letter back unopened." "Then we find another door," he said. "If someone convinced her, they left fingerprints." I called Grandma every day for the next 3 weeks. Sometimes I walked the 40 minutes in my head, exit 17, the orchard with the hand-painted sign, the white dog on the corner, and pictured myself at her porch, knocking in a way she'd recognize. She never picked up. The worst part wasn't losing potential money. That particular fantasies had never stood a chance against Sunday soup and her laugh when I messed up the pie crust. The worst part was that she might live out these last years believing that I had staged our whole story like a heist. On day 20, a small, absurd thing happened. I was parked down the block from her house, the engine off, watching her lamp glow in the front window. I told myself I was just passing by, like a stranger, reverently orbiting an old church. The Pattersons, the neighbors, came out to water their mums. Mrs. Patterson lifted a hand, and I gave a brittle little wave back. Then I saw it, mounted near their porch, a doorbell camera, its glass eye reflecting the streetlights, and high up on the corner of their garage, a second lens, angled toward the gap of fence between their home and Grandma's side door. The thought was so outrageous I nearly dismissed it, but it lodged behind my ribs, a seed in winter. On day 21, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Viola?" a warm voice asked. "This is Mrs. Patterson next door to Oilia. Could you meet me and George for coffee this afternoon? It's about your grandmother." I almost said I couldn't. Grief had been rewiring me so thoroughly that even hope felt like a bad idea. But there was a steadiness in her voice, something like the way Grandma would say, "Add more time, trust me," and I heard myself agree. At the coffee shop, they were already seated, 2 steaming mugs and a small plate with a shared lemon bar between them. Mrs. Patterson didn't waste time. "We know what your brother's been doing," she said. "And we have proof." The world sharpened around the edges. Proof? How? George slid his phone across the table. "We put in security cameras after a break-in last year. One points toward your grandmother's side door and the driveway. The Ring doorbell sometimes picks up audio from her porch." He glanced at his wife. "We don't snoop. We never intended to. But we heard things. We saved them." Mrs. Patterson's fingertip tapped the screen, and there he was. Charles, captured in the muted afternoon on Grandma's front steps, practicing. "Okay, tell her Viola says Sundays are a waste," he muttered to himself, pacing. "No, better, call it a chore for the inheritance." I stopped breathing. Another clip. The driveway, darkness glittering with faint streetlight. Charles on the phone, voice low and triumphant. "Yeah, it worked perfectly. The old lady bought it. Viola's out. I'm in. The whole inheritance is mine. She won't last much longer anyway. Stress is doing the job." A shiver crawled up my arms, as if someone had opened a freezer behind me. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 3 weeks, grief made room for something else. Aim. Mrs. Patterson reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "We can help you show her," she said, simple as deciding to brew tea. "But first, you take this to the police." The lemon bar sat untouched. Outside, traffic continued with the beautiful indifference of the living. I picked up the phone with its horrible, holy evidence and nodded. A different door had appeared. "Tomorrow," I said, and heard a steadiness I hadn't felt since the porcelain plates. "Tomorrow we start." The next morning began with that half-light before sunrise when the world still decides whether to start over. I hadn't slept, just watched shadows crawl across my ceiling and imagined what Grandma's face might look like when she saw the truth. At 7, I packed a folder with everything the Pattersons had given me. Copies of the clips, timestamps, written notes. Ethan brewed coffee strong enough to scrape paint off the walls and handed me a thermos. "You sure you don't want me to come?" he asked. "I need to do this myself first," I said. "If it's real evidence, the police have to handle it." He nodded, jaw tight. "Call me the second you're done." At the police station, the receptionist directed me to a detective whose name I'd read online while frantically searching elder abuse cases, Detective Jennifer Hayes. She had kind eyes that didn't waste time. I told her everything, from the cold Sunday confrontation to the videos, every word tumbling out like it was trying to escape me. When I showed her the recordings, she didn't interrupt. She only said, "We'll take this very seriously." She loaded the USB into her computer, and the small room filled with my brother's voice. Yeah, it worked perfectly. The old lady bought it. Detective Hayes stopped the playback, expression unreadable. Ms. Ramirez, this isn't just manipulation. This is criminal. We're talking elder abuse, fraud, potentially attempted theft. I'll need a full statement, and we'll have to verify the footage's authenticity. Where are the originals stored? At the Pattersons, I said. They can confirm the dates, everything. Good. She stood. I'm opening a case file right now. We'll subpoena phone records, and if she's willing, your grandmother can give a statement once she knows. You said she won't speak to you? She won't even open the door. Then we'll find another way. Her words echoed something Ethan had said. Another door. By noon, I left the station with trembling hands and a case number scribbled on a card. I texted Ethan a photo of it, then another to Mrs. Patterson. They're opening an investigation. Can we still do the tea tomorrow? Her reply came almost instantly. Yes, dear. 3:00. We'll make sure she comes. That evening, I stopped by James Hoffman, an attorney detective Hayes recommended. Someone who specialized in elder law. His office smelled like dust and cinnamon gum. He reviewed the footage, the transcript Detective Hayes had emailed him. This is strong, he said finally. It's not just criminal. You could challenge any will changes under duress. She altered it while being coerced, which means it's voidable. Will that fix everything? He leaned back, eyes softening. Legally, yes. Emotionally. He sighed. That's harder, but you'll have the truth on your side, and that counts for a lot more than people think. Later that night, Ethan and I sat in our small living room, surrounded by the low hum of the fridge. My hand still shook when I pressed play on the clips again. Watching Charles's smirk reflected in the porch light made my stomach flip. Ethan said quietly, "You know, he sounds just like he used to in those family videos you showed me, smiling at the camera right after he broke something and pretended he didn't." I nodded. Yeah, he always knew how to make guilt look charming. We sat in silence for a moment, the air heavy with static. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophie, Ethan's ex. Hope you're okay. Saw Ethan at the market today. He looked worried. I ignored it. Whatever she was fishing for, I wasn't biting. There were bigger things clawing at my life than her curiosity. Ethan noticed the name flash and exhaled. You don't have to worry about that. She's noise, that's all. I know. He brushed his thumb over my knuckles. So what's the plan for tomorrow? Mrs. Patterson's inviting Grandma for tea. Detective Hayes wants to be there. Discreetly, she said. She'll bring her laptop so we can show everything. And if Grandma still doesn't believe it? I swallowed. Then I'll know I tried, but if I do nothing, she'll die thinking I used her. He nodded slowly. Then we fight for her, Viola, whatever it takes. Morning arrived again. Colder this time. I stood by the window as thin light hit the frost on the cars outside, the city half asleep and innocent. In a few hours, my entire family's history would play on a screen like a confession. At 2:15, Detective Hayes called. We're set. I'll be at the Pattersons before your grandmother arrives. Bring that folder, and remember, let the videos speak. Don't argue. Let her see what's real. I understand, I said. Ethan walked me to my car, pressing a kiss to my forehead. You've got this. The drive to Grandma's neighborhood felt different this time. The same road, but my heart counted seconds instead of miles. Every passing mailbox felt like a question. Will she look at me the way she used to, or will she turn away again? When I pulled onto the familiar street, the Pattersons' house was already alive. Curtains drawn, tea steam curling from the kitchen window. Mrs. Patterson met me at the door, her hand warm around mine. She'll be here any minute, she whispered, and we've got Detective Hayes set up in the living room. Inside, I saw the detective's laptop open, the footage cued. My pulse thundered like it was trying to escape my skin. Through the front window, a gray sedan slowed and parked by the curb. Grandma stepped out, small and elegant even in grief, her blue cardigan buttoned wrong, eyes cautious. Let's get this over with, she told Mrs. Patterson. I stayed in the corner until she entered, unsure whether to breathe or disappear. Mrs. Oilia, Detective Hayes said gently, showing her badge. Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. We need to show you something important about your grandson, about your grandson, Charles. Grandma's brow furrowed. Charles, what could you possibly need to show me about him? Please, the detective repeated, just watch. I held my breath as she clicked play. The first video flickered to life. Charles on the driveway, practicing his lies like a bad actor in a cruel play. Grandma frowned, confusion turning to shock. Then came the clip where he called her the old lady, laughing into the phone. When the audio reached "She won't last much longer anyway," Grandma's trembling hand flew to her mouth. I felt my eyes burn. She whispered, "No, no, he wouldn't." But the proof didn't stop. Clip after clip, his manipulation, his rehearsals, his words twisting like thorns. By the time the last recording ended, Grandma's face was wet with tears. She turned slowly toward me, her voice barely audible. "Oh, Viola, what have I done?" Grandma's words cracked the room in half. For a moment, nobody breathed. Mrs. Patterson's teacup trembled slightly on its saucer. The air smelled faintly of bergamot and heartbreak. I stepped forward, every muscle begging me to stop, afraid she'd recoil again. But she didn't. Her fingers clutched the armrest like a ship railing in rough water. "Grandma," I said softly, "it's okay, you didn't know." Her chin quivered. "I threw you out, Viola. I told you to never come back. I said you'd broken my heart." I knelt beside her, the carpet pressing patterns into my knees. "He lied to both of us. He took what you trusted most and turned it into a weapon. None of this is your fault." Detective Hayes closed the laptop and set it gently aside. "Mrs. Oilia," she said, voice calm but firm, "will be proceeding with criminal charges against your grandson for elder abuse, theft, and coercion. But before we move forward, I need your permission to collect further evidence from your home, including the jewelry we saw in the last clip." Grandma blinked, disoriented. He took that?" Mrs. Patterson nodded. "We saw him on the footage, dear. He went through your drawers while you were napping." Grandma's face hardened, the soft tremble vanished. "Then I want everything done properly. Press every charge you can. That boy has stolen 5 weeks of my life, and he'll answer for it." It was the same voice I remembered from childhood, the one that could silence a room full of arguing adults with a single steady word. Detective Hayes gave a small smile. "We'll take your statement now, ma'am." 2 hours later, after the officers left with copies of the evidence and the promise of an arrest warrant, within 24 hours, the Pattersons' living room was quiet again. The tea had gone cold. Grandma sat still, eyes distant. "I don't understand," she murmured. "He was my grandson. I thought he loved me." I hesitated before answering. "He probably loved what he thought he could get." She winced, then nodded. "I kept telling myself he was just busy, that when he skipped visits or forgot birthdays, it wasn't personal. But he was studying me, wasn't he? Looking for the right words to break me down." "He's been struggling financially," I admitted. "But I never thought he'd—" My throat closed. "He could have asked for help. I would have helped him." "That's what makes it cruel," Grandma whispered. "He didn't need to steal love that was already his." She reached out and shook my hand. Her palm was cool, paper soft but steady. "You kept calling, didn't you? You tried to come." "Every day," I said. Her mouth trembled, and then the tears came again. Not frantic this time, but quiet. Old tears that seemed to come from years, not weeks. "I thought I was so wise," she said. "Your grandfather used to say, 'Oil, you could smell a liar a mile off.' But I let my love for Charles blind me." "You trusted him," I said. "That's what good people do." She gave a wet, trembling laugh. "You sound just like your grandfather." Then, after a pause, "He'd be so proud of you." That evening, Mr. Peterson came to the house after being contacted by Detective Hayes. His face was pale when he stepped through the door. "Mrs. Oilia," he said, hat clutched in his hands. "I can't express how sorry I am. I had no idea those changes to the will were made under manipulation." Grandma shook her head. "You couldn't have known. Let's just undo them. I want things set right before I sleep another night." He nodded quickly. "Of course. I'll draft the reversal papers immediately, and I'll note that the prior revision was made under coercion. We'll ensure your original terms are reinstated." "Good," she said, straightening in her chair. "And remove Charles entirely. He wanted money more than family, so now he'll have neither." Her tone didn't rise, didn't shake. It was final, clean as the sound of a lock turning. When Mr. Peterson left, Grandma motioned for me to sit beside her. The lamplight caught the edge of her spectacles, a faint halo around her eyes. "I need to ask something," she said. "When you came that day, when I told you to leave, what were you thinking?" I hesitated. "That I'd lost you." "Forever?" I nodded. She looked away, blinking hard. "I want to remember that, so I never let anyone make me doubt love that deep again." We sat in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that healed instead of hurt. Finally, she reached over and brushed a tear from my cheek with her thumb. "My sweet girl," she whispered. "You didn't give up on me." "I couldn't," I said. "You're my family." Grandma smiled then, faint but real. "Then let's start over." Sunday dinner, the way it's meant to be. You bring the onions, I'll bring the pot roast. A small laugh escaped me. Deal. Outside, the evening air smelled of damp leaves and rain about to fall. Detective Hayes stood near her car, finishing a call. She caught my eye. We'll have him by morning, she said quietly. Be ready for questions. He'll probably deny it until he can't anymore. I'll be here, I said. She nodded, sliding into her car. You did the right thing, Viola. Don't let guilt tell you otherwise. When I turned back, Grandma was standing in the doorway, arms folded, the wind lifting the edge of her cardigan. I wasted 5 Sundays on lies, she said. Next week, I plan to make up for every one of them. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I believed her. By the next afternoon, it was over. Charles was arrested at his apartment after trying to tell the officers it was all just a misunderstanding. When they showed him stills from the driveway footage, his face, his words, his bravado cracked. Detective Hayes later told me he went quiet for a full minute, then muttered, "She was never supposed to find out." That night, Grandma called me for the first time in months. Her voice was small, the way it used to be when she'd catch a cold in winter. "They took him," she said. "I watched the police car drive away. I thought I'd feel relief, but all I feel is empty." "You did the right thing," I told her. "He'll have to face it." "I know," she said after a pause. "But I also know what it's like to lose a child, even when they're still breathing." Her words hung there, fragile as glass. The following week, Grandma reopened her kitchen. When I arrived that Sunday, the scent of roast chicken and thyme wrapped around me like a homecoming. "Don't just stand there," she said, pretending to scold. "Grab an apron." We cooked together for hours. Every movement felt heavier and more precious, passing her the ladle, slicing onions, hearing her hum. There were empty pauses between laughter, but they didn't scare me anymore. Over dinner, she admitted something that had been haunting her. "When I saw those videos, I realized how much of myself I'd lost trying to believe I could fix him," she said quietly. "I kept thinking if I just loved him harder, he'd be the boy I remembered." "You couldn't have known, Grandma. I could have listened to my heart instead of my fear," she said. "That's what hurt the most. Not that he lied, but that I believed the lie over you." Her eyes shimmered. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You don't owe me an apology. We both lost something that day, but we also got a second chance." The next few weeks passed like a slow exhale. Every Sunday became a ritual of repair: roast chicken, pies, laughter that no longer had to compete with silence. Grandma started therapy on Detective Hayes' suggestion. She liked to call her therapist "that clever young woman who charges too much but makes me cry in the right way." I kept going to work, then coming straight to her house afterward. We began filming her recipes. Ethan set up a small tripod and lighting kit in the kitchen. Grandma pretended to hate it. "I'm too old for cameras," she said, waving him off. But when the red light blinked on, she straightened her apron and said, "All right, Viola, let's show them how to make real pot roast." We laughed until tears blurred our vision. In the quiet moments, I caught Grandma staring at the window, her expression unreadable. Sometimes she'd say, "I wonder if he ever loved me." And sometimes, "I hope prison teaches him what kindness feels like." I never knew how to answer, so I learned to listen instead. One evening, Ethan stopped by with takeout and stayed for dinner. Grandma adored him. She said he reminded her of Grandpa when he was young, the kind of man who fixes the sink before he fixes his hair. After dessert, she pulled me aside in the kitchen. "You two are solid, hmm?" I smiled. "Yeah, he's good to me." She tilted her head. "Then don't let ghosts of other women haunt something that's working." I blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Your face gives away more than your words, darling. Whoever that Sophie girl is, she's a ghost. Let her stay dead." I laughed softly, embarrassed but grateful. "You really don't miss anything." "I missed plenty," she said. "That's why I see clearer now." As the investigation continued, Mr. Peterson finalized the reversal of the will. He stopped by one evening with a stack of papers and a nervous smile. "Everything's official," he said. "Your estate returns to the original form, Mrs. Oilia. Charles's additions have been nullified." Grandma signed without hesitation. Then she handed me a sealed envelope. "This isn't about money," she said. "It's about keeping promises. Open it later." When I did, I found not a check, but a handwritten list of every family recipe we'd ever cooked, pages yellowed and creased, annotated with notes like "too much cinnamon," "Viola's fault," and "Ethan approved." At the bottom, she'd written, "You can't inherit love, but you can pass it on. Grandma." By the third Sunday, the laughter was back for real. Grandma's color had returned, her appetite, her stubborn streak. The Pattersons started coming over every Wednesday for dinner. George liked to tease. These cameras were the best investment I ever made. Never thought they'd save souls instead of packages. Sometimes, when the night wound down, Grandma would rest her head against my shoulder and whisper, "I'm not afraid of time anymore. We took it back." But there were still nights I woke up sweating, hearing Charles's voice in the dark. She won't last much longer anyway. I'd sit by the window until dawn, watching the streetlights fade. The guilt didn't vanish overnight. Healing rarely does. But each morning when Grandma called, "Morning, sunshine, I'm baking today," it got a little quieter. One day, as we cleaned the kitchen after filming another recipe, Grandma said something that made me stop mid-wipe. "I'm going to speak at the sentencing," she said, her tone steady. "He needs to hear what he took from us." I swallowed. "Are you sure?" "I've spent my life feeding people," she said, setting the sponge down. "Maybe it's time I fed the truth too." Her eyes gleamed with something fierce and final. And in that moment, I realized my grandmother, who once believed every kind word her grandson spoke, was done living in anyone's shadow. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Maybe it was just the air conditioning, or maybe justice always felt that way. Sterile, sharp, stripped of warmth so the truth could breathe. 4 months had passed since the day we showed Grandma the videos. In that time, we'd rebuilt everything that mattered. Sunday dinners, inside jokes, the way she'd hum off key while stirring soup. But today wasn't about rebuilding. It was about reckoning. Charles sat at the defense table, head lowered, suit wrinkled. I barely recognized him. Gone was the smug grin that used to twist my stomach. He looked smaller, like the lies had finally eaten through whatever charm once held him together. When the judge entered, the room stilled. The prosecutor read out the charges: elder abuse, theft, fraud, and emotional coercion. Charles's lawyer requested leniency, saying he was a young man who made terrible choices under financial pressure. But when the footage played, his voice dripping with mockery, his laughter at Grandma's expense, there was no defense left. Even the clerk looked away. The judge sighed. "Mr. Ramirez, you weaponized trust and inflicted deliberate psychological harm on your own grandmother. This court sentences you to 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years of probation, and orders full restitution for the stolen property. You will also undergo mandatory psychological counseling." Charles didn't argue. He just stared at the floor, hands clasped like a man praying to an empty God. Then came the moment Grandma had insisted on, the victim impact statement. She rose slowly, leaning on her cane but refusing help. Her voice, when she spoke, filled the courtroom like a hymn. "You stole from me, Charles. Not just my jewelry, not just money, but time. 5 Sundays I'll never get back with the granddaughter who loves me more than her own breath. You made me doubt my own mind. You made me believe that love was a trick." For weeks I cried thinking I'd raised a monster, when in truth, the monster was your greed. I will never stop loving you, because love is stubborn like that. But I will never forgive you for making me turn away from Viola. A few people in the back wiped tears. Even the bailiff cleared his throat. Grandma looked over at me, eyes steady. "We are not broken," she said. "We are wiser." When she stepped down, I met her halfway, offering my arm. Her fingers squeezed mine once, enough to say, "It's done." The next months felt like sunlight after a long tunnel. Every Sunday, Grandma and I cooked. We filmed each recipe, cataloging every laugh, every story, every secret spice. Ethan edited the videos and uploaded them to a private family drive labeled Oilia's Legacy. The Pattersons came over every Wednesday for dinner. She brought pie, he brought new stories about their garden. They'd joke, "These cameras might have been our best investment, not for safety, but for salvation." One evening in early winter, Grandma called me into the kitchen. A storm rattled the windows, but she was radiant in her old blue cardigan. "Guess what?" she said. "We're going to make your grandfather's Hungarian goulash tonight." "Didn't he swear never to share that recipe?" I teased. "He did, but he's gone now, and I'm still stubborn." She smiled. "If I can forgive myself for being fooled, I can certainly break one old promise to keep a better one." As we cooked, she spoke softly. "I've been thinking," she said, "about time. How it's the only inheritance worth fighting for. Money fades, recipes fade, but time, that's gold." I nodded, stirring the pot. "We're spending it right this time." She smiled. "Exactly." Later that night, while washing dishes, Grandma dried her hands and looked at me. "You know," she said, "Charles did teach us one thing." "What's that?" That love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. Her eyes softened. I used to think forgiveness meant pretending nothing happened, but now I know forgiveness just means freeing yourself from the weight of what did. She picked up a photo from the fridge, one of her and me, flour on our faces, both laughing. This, she said, is what survived. As the months passed, Grandma grew stronger. She started a small support group at her church for other seniors who'd been financially manipulated by family members. She called it Second Sundays. She told her story every time, not with bitterness, but with purpose. If I can save one grandmother from the heartbreak I lived through, she said, then every tear was tuition for wisdom. Christmas came early that year. Snow drifted past the window, catching light from the tree. Grandma sat by the oven, humming, as cookies baked. 5 kinds this time, she said proudly. No skipping the sugar ones. I laughed. You know I'll eat them all. She winked. Good, that's the point. When we finished baking, she hugged me tight and whispered, You didn't give up on me, Viola, even when I pushed you away. Never, Grandma, I said. Never. I looked around her kitchen, the flour on the counter, the camera light blinking red, the 2 mugs cooling beside us, and realized what real inheritance looked like. Not money, not property, but this, the quiet knowledge that love can survive betrayal, and that the truth, once found, becomes its own form of peace. As Grandma liked to say, some stories don't end with revenge, they end with dinner. And ours finally had both.